Okay, so how to make an alien is more complex than the previous lessons you've been doing. So um, I just thought it would be helpful if I just kind of went through it, recorded myself doing it, and then this way you folks have a reference to go back to, and you can kind of follow my video and kind of do it step by step along with me. So the very first step is just an overview. Like they don't really have you do anything. So part two here for creating the body is really where it starts. So what it tells us to do is to place a cylinder and a half sphere on the work plane. And we're just going to grab the cylinder and the half sphere, and we're going to drop them down. And this is why, to me, this is harder to follow than maybe it should be, is that some of these directions are very detailed, maybe a little overly complicated. It says to move the half sphere up on the z axis until it's higher than the cylinder. So the z axis up and down this way. So they want you to just grab that cone and drag it up so it's higher than this. And they want you to rotate it 22 and a half degrees counterclockwise. And when you rotate, you have three options, right? Three directions you can rotate. So they want you to rotate it this way, 22 and a half degrees. And right now it looks like I can't get it to snap to exactly 22 and a half, but I can type that in by clicking on that number and changing it to 22.5. Now it's saying to position the camera so we can see the bottom of the half sphere. And really, I'm going to kind of skip along because I know what it wants us to do. It wants us to view underneath, and it wants us to place a box uh, near that half sphere. And it's going to have us create a work plane that matches the surface of this half sphere. So I'm going to do this a little out of order because to me this makes more sense. So watch. You can create a new work plane by clicking here or typing in W. And you can place a work plane, right? Our default work plane is this blue grid. You can place a new work plane on any surface. So if I click here, it just gave me a new work plane. And that work plane is at an angle. That angle is 22 and a half degrees, just like our half sphere is. So now if I bring in a box, I'm going to bring in a box as a whole. When I bring it in, it automatically puts it at that same angle, the 22 and a half degrees. What's nice about that is it's going to allow me to use that box to cut that cylinder at 22 and a half degrees. So when you're doing these, I hope you notice that I do look at the instructions, but because they are a little more confusing than I think they should be, what's really helpful is to skim through the instructions and then look at the images that show us what we're trying to do. So I kind of like skipped ahead to look at this preview image. What they want me to do is cut off the top part of that cylinder at 22.5 degrees. And then I'm going to take that half sphere and I'm going to place it right on top of the cylinder. So that's what I'm working on right now. So I'm going to just position this so that it just cuts off. And I might have to make this bigger. I want it to just cut off the top of that cylinder. If I look, it looks like I've encapsulated just about everything, but I just want to really just make sure. Make this a little bigger than it needs to be. And now I can select both that box and that cylinder, and if I group them together, it's going to cut it off at the angle that I was looking for. And now what I want to do is place the half sphere. Now I might need to resize it. And I'm going to get it to match up as closely as I can. So I'm just kind of inspecting it. I can see that I could probably make it smaller on this side. View it from the top. And see what adjustments I need to make. Now it might not match up absolutely perfectly, but you're going to get it as close as you can. What it wants me to do is bring in a pyramid. But before I do that, I want to reset my work plane. This is not going to be at 22 and a half degrees. So if you bring in a new work plane and just kind of click in empty space, it'll reset your work area. So I'm going to bring in a pyramid, and you can even see in the preview image, but it does say in the instructions, right? Place a pyramid on the work plane and rotate it 180 degrees, right? Just like the image. We want to make this happen. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to flip it upside down. If I can snap to 180, I will. Nice. And if I couldn't, I would just change that number to 180. And what they want us to do is turn it into a hole. Because right now it's a solid. If you select it, it'll show solid. We can just change it to a hole. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing some material for the mouth. Now, before I read through all of these, I'm going to just, again, skip ahead so I can get a preview image. I want to see what it is they want me to do. And you can see here, I didn't like that that was blue. There we go. You can see here that what we're going to do is we're going to take that pyramid and we're going to use it to remove like a chunk out of the cylinder to make space for the mouth. So I'll go back again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to position this pyramid. And you can see the shadow that it makes. It's kind of giving us a preview of what the chunk to be removed will look like. Now, I want this to be centered. So I'm going to use a line to get them to all match up perfectly in the center this way. So it's an extra step, but it's really going to help things become more precise. Now, if I rotate this, to me, that preview looks good. So there's no exact location of this, like as far as how deep to make this hole. Pretty close. So I'm going to select these two items, the upside down pyramid and the cylinder. I have not selected the half sphere. So I'm just grouping these two items. So hit group, and it removes that chunk. So before I go for any further, I just want to make sure that that looks good. To me, that looks good. So I feel comfortable moving on. If you do it and it doesn't look good, like you remove too much material or not enough material, you can ungroup, which is this icon here, and then you can make adjustments, right? So you want to like kick that out a little bit. Probably wouldn't hurt, so I might as well. Group. Okay, so next what they want us to do is make the eyes. Now they do give you specific dimensions for the eyes, but I want your alien to be unique. So it doesn't have to be exactly the same as what they make here. You just want it to look about right. That's kind of the name of the game with this assignment, making things look about right. So what I like to do is I like to, again, look at the preview image. These are what the eyes are supposed to look like. They're the same as one another. So I hope you have the instinct to just make one eye and then copy that over. And it's going to be consisting of three shapes. You have two spheres, one for the white, one for the pupil, and then a half sphere for the lid. And the angle for the half sphere matches the top of the head also, which I think is helpful because we don't have to rotate anything more than once. We're just going to copy. And I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to bring in a sphere. And the size they give us is 8 millimeters. So I can change each of these dimensions to 8. It's not the only way to resize it, but it is one way to do it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that white. So I'm going to change the color here by clicking on the existing color. I'm going to change it to white. And then I'm going to copy and paste. Just a little bit smaller. This is going to be for the pupil. So I'm going to change that copy to black and then just kind of make some adjustments. I'm just using my keyboard to change the positioning of it. I'm just kind of clicking around, drag it up. So I think it looks about right. To me, that looks great. Maybe I'll. Now for the eyelid, like I was mentioning, I don't want to bring in a new half sphere, rotate it again to 22.5 degrees because I already have one. That's exactly the angle that I need. I'm just going to copy and paste. I just did Control C and Control V. And I'm just going to resize this. So if I resize from a corner here and I hold shift, it keeps all of the proportions the same, which I think is helpful. And I'm just going to keep resizing this until I think it looks right and repositioning it. Again, if I'm just using my reference image from the next slide, to me that looks good. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Yeah, you're just creating a representation, right, of an eye. It should look about right. And now what I'm going to do, now that I have these created and they're kind of located where I want them to be, I'm going to group them. And when you group them at first, it's going to change all of the colors to the same color, but that's easy to change. If you click on the existing color, you can change it and select what's called multicolor. Now, this way, everything is still grouped together, but the colors are not all the same color. And now I'm just going to place that where it belongs. Now, once I have one of the eyes placed where I think it should go, I'm going to copy and paste. And again, I'm going to use the arrow keys. I'm just kind of dragging that over until I think it looks right. Forward if I want. And if I really want to get precise, which I do, I can, at this point, I can group together the body. So that's like the half sphere and the cylinder. I can group those together. And I can group the eyes together as well. And then I can select everything. And I'm going to use align again and align them in the middle like this. So this way, everything is symmetrical, right? It's the same on both sides. It's an extra step that you don't have to do, but if you want it to really be precise, I recommend it. Now, what they want you to do next is we're going to add a shape called the paraboloid. And they have you make it a hole at first, but you don't really need to do that. All you're doing with the paraboloid is you're making this like there's a black part of the mouth. It's just like the inside of the mouth. And I guess in the instructions, making it a hole, they think helps you place it because it's translucent. But I don't think you have to do that. This is all you're doing for the paraboloid part. This is one of the examples where the instructions I think are more complicated than they need to be. I'm going to make that exactly 180. So I'm going to type that in right now, 180. And this is all you're going to do. You're going to kind of just shrink this down, move it, and place it inside that opening for the mouth. And then you're going to adjust it however you need to. You might need to rotate it a little bit. And the angles are snapping. There we go. Yeah, the angles were snapping like a little too much for me. I think this got a little. So you want that to kind of match up a little bit. And you want it to sit inside the opening of the mouth. You can make this a little wider. Make sure it's not sticking out too much. Oh, I think that looks excellent. So we're just going to change the color to black. And that's it for this part, right, for creating the body. So we will be adding more details next.